you an idea how wide the track is. And we were racing anywhere between 30 to 100 laps in a race on these tracks, and there would be about 30 cars, and we're sliding sideways and right next to each other, and contact was like given. You were always going to be bumping into people a little bit out there. It was very exciting, and I did really well. My best year, I took second place in this I-5 challenge that was going on. That was later when I started touring. So there was these tours that you could get on and go from track to track. So all in like rural Oregon and rural California and Washington.
We have tractor pools. I understand.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing that I came from that background, and now I'm like what I do now.
Right.
I eventually dropped out of high school because I was making what I thought was so much money. It was ridiculous amounts of money for a teenager. It's like I'd go out to a race. My car was sponsored at that point because I'd been doing so well. So it was almost free to go into the race. Then I'd win like $2,000 or $3,000 a weekend.
Ooh.
And it's like, forget this school thing.
Absolutely.
I'm probably making more than my teachers. And so I was building cars for other people, which was side income. So I was making tons of money because my cars were fast. I had started engineering things into the cars that made them faster. Like I made my own traction control system, which was really an exotic new thing. And I came up with this clever way to do it where I tricked my ignition module into thinking the motor was over revving when my tires were spinning too fast. And I would just tell the ignition module like, oh, the engine's over revving, cut the ignition and cut the power. And so I just started dominating that.
Ooh.
Until they banned it.
Oh, they banned it for that. They said that's
they
not
had this
legal.
thing like, that's got to have driver skill to.
Oh, I see. I would
I
imagine.
was all about engineering.
Well, that's a skill. It's a different skill.
Yeah.
I would imagine as a woman race car driver and designer, you would probably attract some attention and also some unwanted assholery. So, and this isn't the last time you've been a woman in a profession largely peopled by guys. What was it like this first time at such a young age, and what advice would you have for other women who feel alone in kind of what they do?
Probably my biggest takeaway from it is things are a whole lot better now. The second thing is people will discourage you from doing things to try to protect you because they don't think you're capable, or they think you might get hurt, and that you should probably ignore those kinds of things. And there's just going to be some mean a-holes out there that feel threatened. And I actually had a guy come up and like punch into my car because we had a collision on the track. So I pull in after the race, and my pit crew's like, stay in your car, that guy wrecked, and he's already been over here once, and we see him coming. So I stayed in there with my helmet on, and he was trying to punch down into the car, and they were jumping on him and stuff. So if you go hang out with a bunch of knuckleheads, you might have to deal with some of that stuff. But really, most of the stuff that I've done in my life that's been really worthwhile, everyone around me thought it was silly or tried to discourage me from doing it. And I've just come up with a rule of thumb that if it's not hurting me and it's not hurting other people, just go for it. I mean, they don't know what's best for me.
I really admire the fact that you will try things, and even if they fail, you just keep going and try something else, and it doesn't stop you from trying to go. And I've seen that with the computer store story as well, which we'll get to in just a second.
Yeah, probably people often ask me about all these highlights in my career, and they're like, wow, you're so talented. And everyone forgets about all the tough times, and they look to me like, wow, you must be like some like super hero or something, but they didn't see the 10 times that I failed before I got to the one thing that I succeeded at. And maybe I'm just too stupid to stop doing things, or or just too stubborn to ever quit, and eventually you just hit something that succeeds. I don't know.
Well, it's working for you. Keep doing it.
Thank you.
I understand you left high school, and you spoke about one of the mentors you had that you said you were trading, cleaning his tools, and he was teaching you some metalworking. What other mentors helped you learn to use the tools and other things that eventually led you to engineering?
Yeah, so early on, maybe even before the machinist, I had ham radio operators that took a liking to me. They were trying to encourage me to get into the hobby because they knew I was into electronics, and mentors are so critical in, I think, everybody's life. There's these folks out there that are very skilled in an area, and usually they're not appreciated. But if you can give them appreciation for exchanging information, they'll gladly teach you more than what you would learn in college, because it's a win-win. And I had ham radio operators for electronics. I had machinists for doing race cars. When I got into a computer store, I had an insurance salesman that was across the street from my store, which I'm kind of skipping ahead here, but he came over and taught me how to not swear so much and be relatable so I could sell computers.
Really?
Because remember, I was still trying to be this wild child even into my 20s. I mean, it was just like my protection mechanism that I'd built up, and that doesn't go over well when someone comes in, back in the days when computers were $1,500 probably minimum. You're sitting there just swearing like, "Oh, fuck yeah, we'll put a fucking kick-ass video card in there." And yeah, that doesn't instill belief in folks. So, mentors, subtly helping people get better. It's a good thing.
Excellent. That leads us to the computer store. It seems that you had several. Were you the manager? Did you own them? How did you end up with all of these computer stores?
So the backstory on that was I was doing the race car thing and becoming increasingly disappointed in the racing, because my stuff was getting banned, and I was looking for something else. And I went over to a friend from high school, to his garage, and he had put together a computer, and he had tricked a vendor into selling him parts at wholesale. So he showed me a computer, and he said, this computer cost me $700, but it normally sells for $1,500.
Ah.
And I'd already had a taste of my entrepreneurship, selling race car chassis. I'm like, whoa, that's a lot of money for very little effort. I was welding and grinding and bending metal and stuff just to make $700. And it's like, wow, that's a business. And we went together and opened a computer store together. So I sold off all my racing stuff, and I funded this computer store with him. And that didn't last too long. Now that I'm older and can see back at what went wrong, I blamed him for the longest time that it was his fault. He kind of booted me out of the store at one point, and we had this huge legal battle and stuff. And what it really, I think, boiled down to is I was really rough around the edges, and so I just didn't know how to play well. And he was probably a little bit more mature than I was. But he booted me out of the store. I lost everything. All my money I invested was pretty much gone, and that wasn't really fair. But I went down the street. I actually moved out of my apartment, and I took my deposits and started couch surfing again with friends. And I rented this little old barber shop. It was a single-seat barber shop, and unbolted the barber chair and threw it out in the alley in the back. And took just the little bit of money that I had. I still have the bank statement, which is awesome. From the day that I opened my own computer store, it was something like $600 in my bank account. It was, and so I didn't have any money to buy inventory, so I would sneak over to his dumpster and I'd pull out all the boxes, these colorful boxes for the computer components. And I scrounged up enough money to get some store fixtures, and I just put these empty boxes all over the computer store to make it look like I had inventory. And customers would come in and they'd be like, well, I want to buy that video card. I'm like, that video card, that one's reserved, but if you give me the money, I'll have one here in a couple days. So there was a distributor close by, and every morning I would drive over and get stuff and then just bring it back. And I was pissed off because this guy had screwed me over, I thought. And so I would do anything to put him out of business. That was my goal. And like if someone came in and said, your ex-business partner there is selling this widget for $10, I would be like, well, I'll do you one better. I'll do it for $8. So
did people catch on to this discount?
Yeah. I mean, it was okay. I was still mostly making money. And eventually he closed up his shop, and I created this huge buzz around the store that it was just an exciting time. I was selling so much product. People would drive in from other cities, and deliveries would come, and there was no loading dock here. So the truck drivers would drop it on the sidewalk, and I hired one employee, and he would watch stuff, and we'd break it down as fast as we could, and we'd bring it in, and I would be like, taking the money from the customers, and they'd be lined up. It was such a magical time. This was around 95, and everyone was, everyone had to get on the internet to surf their porn. So it was just like
emergency.
And I made a lot of money really quickly. Had a lot of hurdles, like stuff with having to be mentored to learn how to like sell and be relatable. But eventually I opened another store and another store and another store, and eventually I had 5, and quite a few people working with me. And then in 2000, the whole computer market changed. The margins of the computers went from like, $400 or $500 per machine profit down to like 175 and even lower. And I mean, we were trying everything. We were selling satellite dishes and cell phones and video games, and we even put together a little network gaming center, before broadband was like really popular. And we thought maybe that would be the thing that would save all the computer stores. And it was like a big family too, which was really, really neat. Like, because I learned how to hire people back then. My first folks I tried hiring were all like, they went to these technical colleges and got degrees and whatever, Microsoft certified, and they were not all that motivated. But what I found, the best employees were like the kind of nerdy, the guys that were still living with their parents at 30 years old, and they just loved computers. You couldn't keep them away from the computer stores on their days off. They would just be there tinkering around, and they were the best employees, and we became friends. We network gamed, but when we had to make the decision to start closing stores, it was really emotional. We'd all pitched in and tried all kinds of things, and we were crying, and we were just like, people were volunteering to like, who's gonna
leave,
keep going. And I gave some of the stores to one of the couples, and then closed some, and so that's the computer store. But I learned a lot, and it was a really good ride, and made some money along the way, and then lost it all trying to help my friends keep their jobs.
I'm sure that's a good experience, though, being an owner and having people working for you, and that's, training all in itself, being a business owner and having employees that look to you, and, management and all that. So I'm sure that's useful.
It's interesting. I stumbled onto like, we'll probably get to this about Valve, but I really didn't try to manage anyone at all, because I just expected people to do and chip in, because it was just, we're kind of like a family, and it worked out. And like, now that I work for Valve, it's like, wow, it feels like I'm back to like the computer store days. Like, anyway,
awesome.
We'll get to that.
Those are always the best environments.
Tintin, do you want to share any of your computer stories, Tinsian? This sounds a lot like your childhood, messing with things at Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah, my background, my gateway was when I was really young. My parents got me a 8088 PC, and I wound up taking it apart and doing a whole bunch of stuff with it. But I had computer equipment that people would throw in dumpsters that my dad would be kind of like, well, I have no idea what this thing is, but I'll bring it home and try and play with it. So for me, taking apart the PCs and trying to figure out all that sort of stuff, I had a small little business going before I was really old enough to fully understand the power of a buck, where people would bring their stuff over and kind of go, this thing isn't